We live in a society, secular and religious, that allows men to escape accountability for their own actions, decisions, and philosophies. And it's not just misconduct, it's full on entitlement. Men are stereotypically, in every culture, country, and territory, basically told that if you want something, you can take it, regardless if the other person consents, wants to, or is responding. And this is in business, personal lives, home life, dating, any pursuit, professional, private, romantic, just entitlement. There's nothing wrong with wanting something as long as you get consent and you care about the people involved. And there's nothing wrong with not wanting something. As we've discussed in other videos, 1% of the population doesn't want to have relationships or marriage, sex, or companionship. Even in the asexual community, there are sub-branches that want a relationship but not sex, vice versa, or nothing, or sporadically. To teach men that every man has to be an alpha male is not taking into account biology. Not all men are alphas, and there's a lot of men, I would say the majority of men, are not the alpha dog type of person. You look at high schools, there's different cliques. There's nerds, jocks, goths, all kinds of different types of guys. Or even girls fit in those categories. The issue is a society that from the cradle teaches men that what they want is something they're entitled to. And you can do it or get it in any way by lying, deceiving. Downright assault is not acceptable. I mean, there are many people out there that probably want the same things you do. Go find them. If you don't want a long-term relationship or any strings attached, there are millions of people out there that are looking for that. What the church does best is create gender roles. They create a scenario, a society of this is the only expected, acceptable, supported behavior, and you better fall in line. But this kind of environment creates predators. It creates a hierarchy where hiding, lying, and preying is so easy. You look over the news in the last 5 years, how many white, cis, straight, religious, or some type of Christian, religious, or conservative men have been arrested for just being a horrible human being. It's not surprising that anywhere that focuses, teaches, and supports the patriarchy, there's going to be a problem. If women were in charge, the world would be 90% safer. You look at the stats of crime. 53% of mass shooters are white men, usually cis. Less than 1% of people who commit mass shootings are trans. The majority, I think it's 93.6% of predators are men, and over half of them are white. If women were in charge, we would see a assault rate drop from 94% to about 6%, roughly, because not all people, of course, go to the police and report. We would see such a drop in entitlement, assault, even though it's still there, because a lot of females are arrested for these kind of crimes. we would see it drop from 94 to less than 10% if women were in charge. Our society would be safer, more nurturing, empathetic. We would prioritize children, career, positive things. There wouldn't be this drive to conquer and silence people. It would be more open and welcoming and friendly and maternal. Because feminism, stereotypically, is a nurturing personality. If women were consistently in charge and it was a matriarchy, women would feel safe walking the streets. They wouldn't have to carry mace with them. Because if women were in charge and there was no toleration for treating women like crap, or even harassment, assault, and sexism, we would see a drop of male predation to barely a pulse. Because when society does not tolerate certain things and consistently arrests, sentencing, jailing, booking, firing people who don't meet a minimum standard of behavior, if men couldn't or wouldn't do these things because there is a 99% chance your life would be over and ruined, men would not be this way. They're only that way because 99% of the time, the men aren't held to account. The odds of being arrested, sentenced with prison time for attacking a woman in any way is less than 1%. If women were in charge, men would not even try to do 90% of the crap they get away with. Because if they knew the people who made the laws, the people who sentenced people, the people who prosecuted these crimes would not tolerate this, they wouldn't act out. I'm sure that some people still would because, that's just life. But if women were in charge and 99% of the time, people who behaved like the toxic form of masculinity behave that way, it would be such a small percentage. Because when there's consistent accountability, like almost zero chance of getting away with these things because the people in charge are the group of people you target. Men wouldn't do this. And it is cis straight men who make up over half of criminals. That's a fact. That's not sexism, racism, that's a fact. You can Google that. And anytime a system, an institution, a religion supports the patriarchy and creates an environment that makes it easy, so easy to groom, harm, control, abuse people. For instance, I was watching something on YouTube where a woman approached John MacArthur, this was like a year or two ago, about an abusive husband. She suspected her husband, she knew he was abusive, physical, emotionally, verbally. She suspected he was a predator and took her kids, and I'm not sure if she went to her parents' house, but a safe place. John MacArthur, a very famous, I'm not sure if he's Baptist, but he's definitely fundamentalist Christian televangelist pastor. Almost as famous as Billy Graham's son, the famous Billy Graham guy. Pretty famous. Recently died. Basically told her to return to her husband, who was in the process of escalating to homicide. Because these people escalate. There's really nowhere to go but up. And she refused and got a divorce. refused to go back, refused to reconcile, refused to put her and her kids into a situation where it could have easily escalated to a Chris Watts situation. You don't know. Because one every 10 minutes, women are killed in this country by their intimate partners, which is why the home is the most dangerous place for women. And you can watch this on YouTube. At least it's still there from when I looked a few months ago. He called the wife out in a service, chastising her for leaving a man who most likely will kill her. Because abusers don't just stop, they escalate. He called her out for being a disobedient wife, a scarlet woman, being a blot on feminine society, and basically damned her. And a year later, she sued him for defamation, emotional distress. He basically ruined her life, ruined her relationships within the church. She had to leave the church because of harassment. Any system, society, or institution, secular or religious, that supports the patriarchy of male control, male domination, and female subjection is creating an environment where women are not safe. Even if they're perfectly safe and they're with a decent person, they're not safe. Just because you're near a bomb and it doesn't explode doesn't mean you're not safe. It means you got lucky. It doesn't mean you're safe. And religion creates the perfect recipe for abuse, control, manipulation, damnation. And if you haven't experienced the negative part of religious Christian marriage, good for you. Women are always blamed for the inability of men to behave in which the age they are. I read a interesting poster today about how violence escalates. Rarely do men just immediately become violent. It's always an escalation. At the very bottom, there's trivialization, such as boys will be boys, grape jokes, body shaming, sexist banter. Then they escalate to victimization, non-consensual photography, sexist attitudes, homophobia, transphobia, unwanted touching or threats, degradation, men taking photos up women's skirts, image-based sexual violence, sending pictures of intimate parts without consent. If you've ever been on a date where you've never given a guy a reason to send you intimate pictures of himself, but he does, that's a form of degradation. Victim blaming, catcalling. Then they escalate to removal of autonomy. Under this is groping, safe word violation, threats, stalking, sexual coercion. And then the top of the pyramid, explicit violence, rape, incest, battery, murder, attempted murder. It's always an escalation. We start with trivializing it, then victimizing it, then degradation, removal of autonomy, and explicit, long-lasting violence. Any society that bases perfection on a male-centered control system is dangerous to everyone. Cis, non-binary, trans, gay, straight, whatever you want to put in there. Anytime that men, specifically cis white men, are consistently in charge, you're going to have problems. You look at every hierarchy within Christian denominations, Jehovah's Witness, Mormons, Southern Baptists, that's where you're going to find the highest statistics of CSA and SA. Because these denominations are led by white, cis, straight men. 100%. They actually teach that women should not be in positions of authority. These are the people that initiate legislation so kids don't have good, factual, statistical sex education. They're not taught about consent. Not even 1 out of 4 states, I mean it's less, it's about 22% max of states teach consent and boundaries and respect in sex ed. Church does an excellent job of teaching boys how to avoid accountability. I mean, read the Bible. There are dozens of male role models, and I use the term role model very loosely, where men do not take accountability for years for violence against women. And you can Google what biblical leaders in the Old Testament blamed women for issues. I mean, the first one that comes off my head is Adam blaming Eve. King David blaming Bathsheba. Judah blaming Tamar. Men will do anything to avoid accountability, which is ironic because if you grow up in fundamentalist Christianity, men are taught to be leaders. So if you want consistency, if men want to be the leaders and shame women for even wanting leadership opportunities, men should take accountability for everything because they're the leaders, because they claim God gave them leadership. But men in these groups only want to be in control until there's accountability required. And then it's always the woman's fault. And there's a lot of churches and denominations that reject the patriarchal system or permit women to have more access to senior positions of leadership. But in fundamentalist Christianity, specifically Baptist, you don't see this kind of thing happening. You see the negative part happening. And it's sad that men believe in such entitlement and just they go out of their way. I mean, the mental gymnastics that's required of themselves and other people to accept that they're not responsible. Everyone is responsible for their own actions, their own choices, their desires and what they act out. But these big men, cis and straight, usually, will claim anything to avoid accountability. You look at Epstein and Trump. The religious people are supporting them. They're not supporting the victims. They're not siding with the women. They're not encouraging the women to make a list. They're supporting predators. Because the system doesn't work if a third of the women don't protect and enable the men, and most of the men don't pray. Praying wouldn't last long if there weren't women especially to help, hide, and enable. And it's not just sexual violence. It's how people treat each other. I mean, women are so afraid to not give their number, they give a fake number. And the churches I grew up in made no intention of showing men what is acceptable. Because the only thing men are taught is to be a godly leader. They don't talk about how to keep your hands to yourself.